We're joined now by our Senior Counsel for Global Affairs, Mike Pompeo, former Secretary of State, former Director of the Central Intelligence Agency. Mike, very interesting. Late last week, Wall Street Journal reports that Cuba is going to host a secret Chinese spy base, so secret we now know, with the focus being on eavesdropping on the United States. So we've been watching the CCP, and you've been talking about this for a long time, ratchet everything up. I mean, spy balloons going throughout the United States. Biden administration shoots it after they get all the data. Now we've got the situation purportedly in Cuba. Let's first talk about the Chinese threat, the CCP threat, the Chinese Communist Party. I remember years ago when you first were on this broadcast, after you had finished your tenure at Secretary of State, that you talked about like around the universities, these Chinese cultural centers. I mean, they've infiltrated every aspect of culture and society.
So, Jay, thanks for having me on today. Two things. One is you're right. This external threat, the spying from Cuba, the spy balloons, all the work they're doing in space today is very serious. It demonstrates Xi Jinping's global intentions. But the second point you make is a good one, which is not only are they doing these things outside of the United States, but it's affecting every American here at home. Not only are they buying land inside the United States at important sites near our military facilities, they're running police stations inside the United States. We had to shutter the consulate in Houston, Texas. They were running a huge spy operation from a diplomatic facility. We see what's going on in our universities, where the Confucius Institutes are impacting American citizens of Chinese descent, trying to shape the way they engage with the university system. These are all things that affect every American. They're not far away. This isn't off someplace. It's in your local town, in your community, at your local university.
When we talk about a spy base, that's what it's being referred to as, in Cuba, what does that mean? What does that look like?
So I've read the reporting. I don't know exactly. While they've said this happened in the Trump administration, it sounds like what's really going on there was nothing remotely related to what the Chinese have been doing around the world for years. But put aside, I'd always it's annoying when they try to blame someone else. They've been in office almost 3 years now, for goodness sake. But it doesn't matter. What they're trying to do is collect signals intelligence, being able to tell what's moving. Think about all of our military bases in the southeast part of the United States, watching equipment movements, watching training, seeing who's going in and out of the gates of the facility. All of those things are possible to do when you're up close, call it 80, 90, 100 miles away from the United States. You can collect important intelligence about American national security assets, who they are, what they are, where they're moving, and you can begin to develop a picture of how the United States would operate in a moment of conflict.
Is your sense, as it relates to that the threat from China is unrelenting at this point? I mean, do you see them backing down under the current administration's policies?
Well, there'd be no data to support that theory. And we ought to listen to Xi Jinping. He has been very intentional about shaping the environment, talking about America in decline. That's why the work the ACLJ does is so important, right? Trying to protect the things that matter most here in America. That's what Xi Jinping is after. He wants us to turn on ourselves, to walk away from our traditions. And there is no evidence that what the Biden administration is doing to date is convincing Xi Jinping that he ought not do that. That is the deterrence model that we developed in our 4 years in office. Those 4 years of deterrence began to work. We still had a ways to go. But just like Vladimir Putin invaded Europe, I think Xi Jinping senses this may be his moment, and that creates an awful lot of risk of losing the very deterrence that keeps us all safe.
There are a few people that we could talk to that's actually have been in the room with Xi Jinping, the chairman of China, the president and premier of China, so to speak. I mean, it's a lifetime appointment these days. You've been in the room with him, with Chairman Xi. This guy's playing for real. I mean, this is not a game for him. This is a world dominance issue for them, correct?
100%. And he makes no bones about that. It's just about timing for him. How long is it going to take, and what's the most efficient way to deliver his ultimate objective? He talks about Chinese rejuvenation. He talks about the Middle Kingdom. This is ancient historical stuff, Jay, right? This is how he thinks about China's place in the world, and thinks that they have been shunted off of that by the United States for 75 years, and he's not about to let that happen for another 75 years. We can stop this. It's not inevitable, Jay, but it's just going to take a resolve and a seriousness to understand the risk, understand the threat, build out a team of people who care about human dignity and the basic rule of law, And in the end, much like Reagan described to the Soviet Union, we'll win and they'll lose.
You have an article up at ACLJ.org, Weak and Woke won't deter America's adversaries. I reflect back on your tenure as Secretary of State and, of course, also as Director of the CIA, and how we had so much respect globally, and that our adversaries would be hesitant to start a war in Ukraine, to invade Taiwan, to send a spy balloon over the United States, or set a spy outpost in Cuba, 90 miles off the shore of the Florida Keys. Now, having said that, and you point this out in the article, is what is the deterrence for these enterprises from these governments right now under the Biden administration? I just don't see it.
Boy, and this is unfortunate, Republicans supported this too. I'm not sure that we're going to resource our military appropriately. But apart from the actual number, the amount of money the taxpayers spend on it, we're using it in ways that don't focus on the mission set. When you're spending so much time doing diversity diversity and inclusion training, when you are thinking about, I want every military vehicle to be carbon neutral, these are things that the Chinese Communist Party says that's a military that's lost its focus. That's a national security apparatus that is thinking about things other than being prepared to fight and win wars. And when you do that, Jay, the other side thinks, I just might be able to move. And so Putin certainly did in certainly did in Ukraine. And I watched what's taking place in the Middle East too, where the Iranians are continuing to try and expand their effort to kick us out, to get Americans out of that place in a way that would put Israel at risk. These are things that lose the deterrence model that has been built over time. And boy, it's hard to get back, Jay, once you've lost it.
One other thing I wanted to discuss, and that is UNESCO. When you were Secretary of State, we pulled out of UNESCO, which is the UN Education, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. We do a lot of work at the UN. Why was it the right decision to pull out, and what's the mistake here that the Biden administration made by getting back in it?
So if you look at UNESCO's mission statement, you'd say, goodness gracious, that's all, sunshine and butterflies, all good stuff. This was a deeply anti-Israel organization. Had snuggled up to the Palestinians. It no longer reflected America's value set, and so we left it. It looks like the Biden administration is going to re-enter that. Their claim is that China is beginning to have too much influence there. You watch. China will have more influence there as a result of U.S. taxpayer dollars underwriting UNESCO than it has even sitting here today. I have a model to protect American taxpayers from their money going to help the Chinese and work against our partner, our friend, our ally, the nation of Israel.
Yeah, I'll tell you something. Mike, we appreciate it as always. Mike Pompeo, of course, Senior Counsel for Global Affairs of the ACLJ.